Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl, Erica, the author, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Sunday. I hope your day is going well. I'm here to do my weekly review of Love and Marriage Huntsville. We are now in season 11. This was episode 4, and it was called Oops, DM'd Again. Now, guys, I have a whole lot of notes here, as you can see, and I'm going to have to actually refer back to my notes quite a bit because there was a lot of dialogue and I don't want to leave anything out. So just bear with me, guys. Let's get into it. So they are still, the crew, Destiny and the Scotts are still in Michigan. The opening scene was with MARSAU, LATRICIA, Kimmy, and Maurice. They actually went to an ice cream parlor called Leon's or Leonie's. They said that this was like a staple in their community. It is still there after all these years, although MARSAU and Maurice have moved away and they've been gone for years, probably over 20 plus years. This place is still in existence, and they went there to actually get, of course, their slushies. That is like a childhood. Everyone loves slushies when they were younger, and we still do. Even as an adult, you still love those things, especially on a hot day. So they went to get slushies. I think Letitia was the only one that got ice cream, but anyway, they're sitting outside, you know, enjoying their ice cream, enjoying the slushies, and they were just talking. They started talking about Papa Scott. For some reason, guys, I just cannot commit his name to memory. I don't know. I think his name may start with an M as well, but I'm just not sure, so I'm going to call him Papa Scott. Well, anyway, they were talking about him and how he was sort of acting a little standoffish and, you know, sort of more like in a reflective mood. There was something different about his disposition this particular time. And so they, you know, everyone said, at first Kimmy kind of mentioned it to them. MARSAU and them said they saw it, but then they didn't see it. And we know that women oftentimes pay more attention to stuff like that over men. I think because MARSAU and Maurice were more or less going around their Uncle Rick's academy. You know, they were having something there, so they were more or less paying attention to that. So maybe they really didn't hone in on their father's you know, his sort of attitude or disposition, but they did say that he wasn't himself. MARSAU said, they all said that he was very quiet and I said that he was quiet and reflective, but MARSAU said that he's had conversations with his father. Kimmy, you know, trying to be the good Samaritan, trying to tell them maybe, you know, I think your father, you know, he feels bad about maybe not being there for you guys. And, you know, maybe, you know, you feel, you know, he feels a certain way or whatever. And have you guys ever told him, you know, how you really felt or whatever? And MARSAU and Maurice both agreed that they enjoyed their childhood. Although things weren't perfect, they really did not have anything negative to say about their childhood. And that's good. But at the same time, I wanted to say, Kimmy, I know you're trying to be the good Samaritan, and I know you're trying to tell them to quote unquote do the right thing. But Kimmy, oftentimes in situations like that, you have to let sometimes people sit in what they've done. I know sometimes we want to make people feel good and we want them to, you know, no, we want them to know that we love them, even including our parents. You know, our parents have made mistakes. If you're a parent, you've made mistakes with your children, or if you haven't done it yet, you most certainly will. And the thing about it is, oftentimes we don't want to sit in what we've done. Sometimes you need to sit in what you've done. You need to think about it. You need to figure out how, you know, you may not be able to go back and change the hands of time or turn the hands of time back and do it all over again, but you can acknowledge that there was some wrong there. You can acknowledge that you could have done things better. You can acknowledge that maybe, you know, you didn't do what was best at the time, but you didn't know anything else, and let it be that, and more or less humble yourself enough to apologize and say, I was wrong. And I think that's what happens. MARSAU said that his father wasn't there for them, but he doesn't hold that against his father. He said that, you know, his father was 26 years old with 9 children, and that's a lot for anybody. He said that he doesn't really, you know, he looks at his father not so much as a hero, but he knows that his father just did the best that he could do. And so he was saying that he admires his father. Maurice kind of seconded that. Maurice didn't talk as much as MARSAU did about it, but they both again said that they would not change their childhood. So like I said, Kimmy, I knew what you were trying to do. You were trying to tell them to be positive, make Papa Scott feel good, make him, let him know that they love him and stuff like that. And MARSAU said that they had never looked at it and that they would talk to him. But MARSAU did say that, his father is dealing with his own guilt. And like I said, let him sit in it sometimes, guys. Let him sit in it. When we were younger, our parents told us life lessons. They were saying, hey, you have to be strong in this area. You have to tighten up in this area. You have to do this. You have to do that, because it's a dog-eat-dog world, and life is going to bite you in the behind if you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't look for this and you don't look for that and you don't get your education and you don't work hard and do all these things. But at the same time, they gave us those lessons, but also they made mistakes in, even raising us, perhaps being too hard on us sometimes, or being too, it just depends. Everybody had a different childhood, but I'm just saying, oftentimes everybody raised their children differently, but there are some people who in this world, they were raised very harshly and they really didn't feel the love from their parents. So if you were one of those people and you didn't feel the love from your parents, of course you're going to respect your parents and honor your parents, but it's okay to tell your parents, I did not feel love. I did not feel like you gave me what I needed. I feel like you weren't always there for me. It doesn't mean that there's no respect there, but also respect also comes with truth. And sometimes we have to tell our parents and people we love the truth. So I'm looking forward to, them having that conversation, and I hope that they can put some truth on it. Yeah, you can put a little sugar. Well, like they say, you shouldn't put sugar on sugar honey iced tea. But at the same time, too, you can still love your dad, respect your dad, but also acknowledge that he wasn't the best father, and in turn, just try to be better for yourself. So Ken and LATRICIA, we see them, they were sitting outside. I think Ken was working on one of his trucks, and LATRICIA bought him some water, and they just sat down and talked. They started talking about their actual session with Dr. Francis. Of course, Ken finally went to therapy with LATRICIA for a session. Ken said that he had sort of checked out when they kind of started arguing, and that's typical Ken. Ken checks out whenever there's an argument. So it's not just about the fact that they were arguing with Dr. Francis. He does that all the time. When they argue at home, he leaves. Now we know that Ken even has his own apartment. So that's just what he does. Ken is not a person that's going to stay there and try to talk. Maybe his temper gets bad, so he wants to remove himself from the situation. That's all well and fine too. But then you also have to come back, and you do have to sometimes just work things out if you feel that it's worth working out. So LATRICIA brought up the fact that, and LATRICIA even said in their confessionals, she said that they don't argue that much, but when they do, it's extremely bad. And Ken confirmed that. He was like, yeah, it's bad. So both of them probably have a temper wherein, if there's an argument within their household, it goes from 0 to 100 real quick. They may not do it every day. They may not do it every week, but when it does, it is like off the charts. So I can understand that when they say that. So if you know that when you have arguments, they go to like a whole nother level, then you do need to kind of work on perhaps not having those arguments. We know that you're human, you're going to disagree, but I think that they have to find a healthy way. If they're going to be together, they have to find a healthy way to communicate where it doesn't take them to those levels where it gets out of control. Because like I said, if y'all don't call it quits, y'all gonna call the cops. And I think I said that on one of my other videos, or maybe I said it in the little caption. And I kind of feel that way, because if both of them have tempers like that, anything is bound to happen when they're getting into it. So LATRICIA brought up the fact of what Letitia said, and said, Letitia told LATRICIA that, hey, Ken was in some women's DMs, and Ken just said that, yeah, it happened. He admitted it, but he said it wasn't a big deal. And I said to myself, how is that not a big deal if you're in a committed monogamous relationship and the two of you have agreed to do that? Although you're not married and you're in a committed relationship, how could you say that it's not a big deal. You talking to someone just because you're angry with me at the time does not give you permission to just go out and to talk to someone else, especially without my knowledge. If you feel like you need to move on, if you feel like you need to go in another direction, then you need to hit the pause button and, basically stop the whole thing and say, hey, right now I just feel like, maybe we need a break. We need to call it quits. We need to go our separate ways for a while and do it clean and do it right. Not necessarily just go and talk to somebody else. But I know that Ken, there's a small part of him that Ken feels justified in what he's doing because LATRICIA is still married to Marquez. Her divorce is not finalized. So I feel like he has this thing where he feels justified in what he's doing because LATRICIA even said that. She said, when did it become okay to respond? And Ken had a bunch of excuses, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. Everything he was saying, he was going around in circles. I didn't really like anything that Ken was saying, and I wrote in my notes, bottom line, Ken just likes the attention. Right now, I said it before in some of my other videos, Ken, he's on television now. He's getting a lot more attention. I'm not saying that he wasn't getting it before, but he's probably getting even more attention now. And, he likes that attention. He likes how it feels, especially when LATRICIA's not saying I love you, especially when LATRICIA's not hugging him, especially when LATRICIA is not giving him the attention that he needs, because apparently Ken is a man who needs more words of affirmation. He needs more physical touch. He needs more things from LATRICIA that she's not giving him when they're going through these problems. So of course, if you can get attention and these women are telling you how fine you are and, calling you chocolate drop and saying, making you feel good and boosting your ego and letting it go through the roof, of course you're going to talk to other women. So like I said, I think Ken was not honest about what was going on in that moment. And bottom line, Ken, you are wrong for talking to other people. And I just think that, LATRICIA basically said, I don't know about LATRICIA and Ken. I don't know where they are, like I said, where they stand today, but I'm just not sure about how they're going to actually, if it's going to work out. LATRICIA said that it threw her trust off again because he did that. And he said that, basically, again, he said that he didn't like the fact that Letitia was messy and he's going to address it. So even if you address it, when a woman says that her trust has sort of been broken or it is causing a trust issue and it's now a trust factor, you're going to have an even bigger problem on your hands, Ken. So MARSAU and Maurice, they're headed back to the ceremony where they all are. The Scotts are going back to a ceremony. As I said last week in my review, their Uncle Rick, who is basically their father's best friend, he has like an apprenticeship or an academy there where people can come and learn how to become construction workers. They can, they have an apprenticeship where you can learn all kinds of things about building homes, renovating properties, all those things. They were having a ceremony and they went back to the ceremony. MARSAU and Maurice spoke at that event, and they also, they talked to their father first. They asked their father how he was doing, and they wanted to make him feel good about who he was. MARSAU said, and I had this question, guys, and I have to look at my notes. He said, MARSAU said that he understands his father in a way. He said, my wife has 3 kids and I'm trying the best I can do to help her raise them. And I said to myself, MARSAU, even though you're trying to say you're validating your father's feelings and what he's saying, why are you not saying that Letitia and I have 3 beautiful children and we're raising them together? He said, my wife has 3 children and I'm trying to help her raise them. He took himself almost out of the equation. No, you guys are one big circle. How is it that you're removing yourself and you're saying you're trying to help? You should have said, we are trying to raise our children to the best of our ability. So that kind of threw me off when he said that. I was like, okay, MARSAU, I don't know where you're coming from with that, but that's just me. Let me know, guys, if you picked that up, if you saw the episode. Let me know if you you know, you thought anything about it, if you felt some kind of way about that, or if you had a different perspective of it. Me personally, I didn't know where MARSAU was coming from. I felt like he was making it seem like those are LATICIA's children all on her own, and he's just helping. But that's just me. So like I said, they spoke, MARSAU and Maurice spoke at the ceremony, and they also donated some type of supplies to the actual school. Their father, like I said, you can tell that their father is not in a good place in this episode. I think that he does feel a whole lot of guilt. And like I keep saying, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay, because he needs to feel that in order for him to even be a better person, he needs to feel that, and he needs to acknowledge what he's done wrong. So he even said in the at the ceremony that he thanked his best friend, because he said although he had boys and he tried to instill certain things in them and teach them certain things, whatever he couldn't do, and if he couldn't do it, Uncle Rick, his best friend, was there to sort of pick up the pieces and to keep them going, and to sort of be there when he couldn't. And that was still a good thing. And I'm glad that MARSAU and Maurice and probably his other brothers had Uncle Rick, because we know that oftentimes, you know, that's how children go astray at times, when they sort of don't have the love of their parents. You know, at least Uncle Rick was there to sort of continue to mentor them and continue to sort of love on them and to pour into them, so that they could sort of go out into the world and do what they needed to do. So we back in Huntsville. Mark, not the Scotts, but the scene shifts back to Huntsville. We see Martell. He's meeting up with Ken and Will. They meet up at Will's. He has a lounge. There's nothing good going on at this lounge, guys. I can tell you guys, like, as bad of a person as Martell is, and we know him to be, with all the cheating and the women and all those things, it just gave a very gothic, dark vibe. He had like skulls all over the place. It was just really dark in there. Like I said, nothing. Let me say this: if you're married or if you're in a committed relationship, you don't need to go, because nothing good is going on at this lounge other than a bunch of yeah. Will, we already know. If you've watched my videos, I've already expressed to you that I don't particularly care for Will. Will, to me, is just one of those men that you don't want your man to hang around, if especially if he's easily influenced. And let's be clear, guys, just because you're married to a man and he's an older man, or, you know, he's not necessarily in his 20s or in his early 30s anymore, that doesn't mean anything. Some men are still influenced by their friends. They shouldn't be, and you would think that they're not, but they are. So Will is one of those guys to me that, like I said, he's not going to tell you to do the right thing. In my opinion, I could be wrong. I stand to be corrected. That's just the perception that I get from him. So Martell was asking Ken and LATRICIA. He was asking Ken how he and LATRICIA were doing. Martell, you know, is just really on this thing about, how's it going, man? Oh, you need your peace. You know, LATRICIA, she's doing all this lying. Martell, stay out of it. You know, you're there as a man. You just listen to what Ken is saying and you let it be what it is. You don't know LATRICIA. I don't care if you and LATRICIA talk. I don't care if you guys met up. I don't care if you guys even had sex and you still want to deny it. Still in all, you still really don't know LATRICIA as a person. If you saw her one time or 10 times, you still really don't know her. And so Martell needs to watch what he's saying. But he did say, you know, Ken was still talking about he's at the apartment, and Ken loves to tell the people, you know, if he's at a peaceful place when he's at this apartment, he's at a peaceful place when he's at the apartment. Ken, if this apartment is bringing you so much peace, then maybe you need to stay there full time. Maybe you need to change it from a temporary spot to your permanent place, because we all know it's important to be in a peaceful place. So if Trisha is bringing that much chaos and you have more peace at this apartment, then we need to address why you have so much peace at this apartment. And if you're in a better place, then maybe you need to stay there all the time. he said he told Martell about, and Will, because they were both sitting there, about what LATRICIA said about him being in women's DMs. And Martell was kind of like thrown off, like, LATRICIA of all people, knowing the things that have been said about her husband and what he's really doing, there's no way that she could be saying anything. And Martell was like, LATRICIA's being messy and I don't like it, and she has a nerve, especially with the kind of husband that she has. And, you know, like I said, Martell exposed them last season and said that, yeah, MARSAU was talking to other women. And I do believe Martell, whether he was right in doing it or not, yeah, he exposed it, and I do believe him. But at the same time, Martell, like I said, it's better for you to stay out of Ken and LATRICIA's and stop being so judgmental about Ken and LATRICIA and their relationship. So Ken said he doesn't like the gossip. He even said, it's going around so much. He said even someone told him that LATRICIA was at a place, I guess, in Huntsville called Lemon Drop, and that she was there with another guy who was kind of sort of bulky and swole like Ken. So he said that there is a lot of gossip going around and he doesn't like it. He said he's not going to knock the DMs. He said he's not doing anything bad when he's talking to these women in the DMs. He said he even met LATRICIA in the DM, but it was innocent. And so Will was like, I'm not buying that. He said basically, if you see a woman, you're attracted to her, you're looking at her body, you want to smash, there's no way that there's anything innocent about you, you know, sort of talking to her, striking up a conversation with her in her DM. And I agree with Will. Basically, if a man sees you, or, you know, or vice versa, if a woman sees a man and you're attracted to them and you basically, you know, you basically want to smash, you're not looking at this person and saying, oh my God, this is my wife, this is my husband. So, you know, you don't know that offhand. So I do agree that most of the time when you meet a person, it is normally based on physical attraction. If you've known a person for a long time and then you guys just sort of click and you've always been laughing and you've known this person, yeah, that may be a little different if you've known them for a while and you've been around them for a while. But if you're just seeing them instantly right off the break and, you know, you want to talk to them, it is based on some sort of physical attraction. So Will was right to say that. Ken, I know you want to play this good guy role, but in this particular situation, you're not the good guy. So Destiny met up with Tisha and Kimmy. Well, she was talking to Tisha and Kimmy first. So she's in Pontiac, Michigan with them. I think they were still in Pontiac. I think MARSAU and Maurice was sort of like maybe in wherever they were. I don't know if it was a restaurant or wherever they were. They probably were inside, but she was just with the ladies at first. They asked her how everything went, and Destiny just said it felt good to see her family. You know, she sort of talked about how, you know, how everyone felt to see her mom. You know, she was very honest about her mom not being in the best place, but she kind of feels, you know, very responsible for just trying to like hold them together now. She said now her brother wants to even come and visit her. So that's a good thing. So we all know that it seems like some positivity came out of what Destiny did. She even told them how her grandmother was able to meet all of her grandchildren. And that's always a good thing. So like I said, something positive definitely came out of this. Hold on a second. Excuse me, guys. So Destiny said that she has learned, and so Maurice and them were talking, and then I guess Maurice and MARSAU, yeah, they came and sat down. So Maurice asked he asked Destiny, you know, hey, you know, how did it go? And of course, she kind of repeated some of the same, and they were like very excited for her, you know, because I guess they were trying to put themselves in her shoes. Destiny said that she learned in therapy that you cannot mask your pain because you're really not dealing with it. And that is true. You know, if you're not really, you know, if you're pushing it down, if you're not discussing it, if you're not talking about it, if you're not acknowledging that you have some issues or you're struggling with something, yeah, I can agree with that. I've never gone to therapy, but I can just about imagine. I'm very big on, like I said, communication. I'm very big on, you know, you have to acknowledge things. You have to sort of, you don't have to submit to it, but you do have to acknowledge it and say, hey, this is what it is. Something's wrong. Something's off. I'm not myself. You know, maybe, hey, I am upset about this. I am a little angry about this. I am a little bitter about this situation. And I think as the older you get, it is important for you to be honest about who you are and what's going on and what you're feeling. Um, and so that's when she was talking to them. So Maurice was kind of joking around with her, and he said, is that why, it explains why you're so feisty? I know I can tell you're a softer person on the inside, but you come across as kind of like hard and feisty. And so MARSAU said, no, she's very aggressive. And she said, that's the wrong A. It's the word is assertive, not aggressive. And they kind of joked around, and I really like to see that. This conversation could have went left, but what I like about MARSAU in this situation is that he knows what LATRICIA told him in their conversation. Had MARSAU, LATRICIA was very quiet, but she fed off of MARSAU's energy. So MARSAU was joking around. So LATRICIA probably would have, if MARSAU had sort of gone at Destiny about certain things, it would have lended, LATRICIA would have been able to go in on Destiny because she would have had backup. But MARSAU kept it very light, and they kept joking around with her. And I was glad that they went there. So MARSAU was like, hey, I'm pretty much a truth teller, but yeah, sometimes I do lie. And Destiny was like, yeah, you are a liar, we know. And, but again, they kept the humor there. They kept joking. They kept laughing. And I like that. Then they said, Maurice asked her, has she ever been to Pontiac? And she was like, yeah, of course. She was like, her grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness. And Maurice was like, oh, yeah. They high-fived. He was like, yeah, because, if you came to the dome with her. She was like, yeah, I used to come with my grandmother all the time. And they kind of laughed about it. So they kind of had like a connection there. So MARSAU was like, Destiny, I'm learning so much more about you. All these things about you. I really didn't know who you were. And I like this person. I'm learning so much. So he said, Destiny, tell me how old you are. And she said, they all just bust out laughing. And she was like, you don't ever, ask a woman's age, And that was kind of like the end of the scene. But I wanted to say, guys, I've heard that so much, that you never ask a woman how old she is. And I know that's probably, I don't know if it's just a Southern thing or it was just a thing in our community, Black community, and in our culture where you don't ask a woman her age. I've heard older people, like maybe my grandparents' age, say that. I've never heard my mom say you can't ask someone's age, a woman's age. And if someone asked me my age, I would not necessarily be offended by that. Like, I'm 49 years old, and I've been very clear about that. Like, I'm 49. If someone asks me, yeah, I'm 49 years old, like, do I have to lie, or should I say, oh, it's, you don't ask me my age? Like, no, I'm proud. I'm 49 years old, and that is what it is. There are people nowadays, people ain't even making it that long. So it's a blessing to even just say you're still alive and you're still here. So, hey, you don't have to be ashamed of your age. It is what it is. You've lived to, and you've gotten where you are, and that's just what it is. But let me know, guys, have you, do you feel offended if someone asks you your age, especially if you're a woman? Do you feel offended by that? I know I don't. I know everyone is different, but I didn't really get that. That's just like an old traditional thing with women, but I think it's 2026, guys. We are past that, right? But anyway, we'll go on. So the next scene we see MARSAU and Martell, not MARSAU, Maurice and Martell meet up. They're back in Huntsville, and so they were discussing the trip to Pontiac. Martell was getting all the details about that. He told Maurice that he met up with Ken and Will, and Ken has moved out. Maurice, Maurice loves that. Really, Maurice probably wanted to say, oh, let me get Ken's number, or let me try to get that address so I can go and hang out over there myself. But he was saying, no, Maurice is so phony. No, really? Wow. I didn't know all of that was going on. Well, Ken had mentioned that they had been having some issues before. Martell said that Trisha's, a liar and stuff like that. And again, I said to myself, all of these men, MARSAU, Maurice, Martell, Ken, Marquez was on there, Will, Lance, all these, Chris, all these guys on this show, to me, them calling women liars is laughable to me. All the stuff that they've done, whether it was in the past or whether it's something they've done in the present, all the things that they've gotten themselves into and all the things that they've done, they're calling women liars like that. I was like, that's stupid to me. That's laughable to me. I was like, Martell is such a joke to even call somebody a liar. But he was, again, filling Maurice in on what's been going on. And then they started to shift the conversation. Martell, Maurice asked Martell, what did he have going on? Martell said he was in the process of trying to buy this new property, and he's trying to get that to go through. And he asked Maurice what was going on with him. Maurice kind of told Martell that MARSAU is sort of taking his time with this project. I forgot what it's called. I want to call it Sugarland or Sugar something. There's a project that's going on with this house. MARSAU is taking his precious time. Maurice said he's a little upset about it. He knows that Kimmy is getting a little upset about it because MARSAU seems to be dragging his feet. Martell said, you know, when I used to say that I was the bad guy, he said, but MARSAU has always been that person when they worked together, that he was always dragging his feet and not sort of getting their projects done on time. So obviously that is an issue that will be addressed later on at some point, because I do remember seeing the scene where MARSAU and Maurice kind of got into it. And Martell just said he understands, you know, he was like, hopefully, you know, he'll, you know, sort of pick up the pace, so because it's holding you guys up. But Maurice seems to be picking a bone with MARSAU about this, and like I said, I know it's going to come back up in some kind of conversation later down the road. Ken goes to Black to talk to MARSAU. They were initially sitting outside, and I guess it got too hot, so they decided to go in. Ken, again, is telling everybody he moved out. It's almost like a badge of honor. It's like every time he gets with somebody, hey, I moved out. Hey, I got my own apartment. Hey, I moved out. Hey, I got my own apartment. It's like, okay, Ken, what's up with this? You know, I know that you haven't maybe seen these guys, or you're filling them in, and this is what you have to do, but it's almost like you want the guys' approval for them to like slap you on the back and tell you you did a great job because you moved out and got your own place. It's getting on my nerves a little bit. But he told MARSAU about it, and MARSAU said that, you know, he was trying to teach Ken a life lesson, but then he ended up telling Ken, basically, you and LATRICIA are playing games. It's like cat and mouse type thing. He was basically telling Ken, you know, basically, you and LATRICIA, you don't get along. You know, it's like, why are you guys kind of sticking it out? Basically, MARSAU was saying, you guys don't really need to be together. There's too many issues. She's still married. You're dealing with her. You're taking care of her kids. You're trying to play daddy. You know, this is a combination of things that MARSAU has sort of said to him over the past couple of seasons. You know, you're playing daddy. You're doing all these things, yet you guys are constantly fighting. You're moving out. You want LATRICIA to chase you, which I do agree with, and you know, you guys are just playing. You need to, you know, basically give up the ghost and let it go. And so Ken seemed to be a little offended by that, and then Ken decided to tell MARSAU, what LATICIA said. He said that, you know, LATICIA's going around. He said, your wife is going around telling LATRICIA that I'm in someone's DMs. And so all, you know, all of what MARSAU was trying to do, you know, you could tell MARSAU was sort of taken aback by it. And he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, my wife is doing this? Like, what's going on? Like, no, I don't like that. He was like, yeah, that's kind of like a bad look. You know, I don't really like that. You know, you could almost see So was kind of like at level 10, and he had to come all the way down to 1, because he was saying, okay, now I'm coming at this guy, you know, hard, and I'm coming at him straight like that. And here I am, you know, my wife is doing something that she has no business, especially with our history and how people have said that I'm cheating, and people have been saying all kinds of rumors about me. So he was like, he's going to get to the bottom of it. He said, you know, I need to find out the context of that conversation. And Kim was like, okay, cool. Basically, it was said. You know, he told him everything that he said. He and LATRICIA had the conversation about it. LATRICIA said she was at Letitia's house, their house, and that's when LATICIA told him and told LATRICIA what was going on. And so he said, MARSAU was like, I'll get to the bottom of it. And Kim was like, be my guest. And that was the end of the episode. So we will see what happens next week, guys. Overall, it was a decent episode. Let me know what you think. How do you feel about, you know, Ken and LATRICIA? Do you think they need to call it quits? Do you think they're just doing this for a storyline? Or do you really think that Ken and LATRICIA are really at a place where they're going to work out their relationship? Let me know what you think, guys. And also like this video and subscribe to my channel again, and please share my video. I know there are some people who don't actually have, you know, own TV or have a way of even looking at the show. they sort of just read what's going on online. Share my video if you can. You know, or people just don't have time to do it. There are a lot of, you know, people have kids, they have responsibilities, they have things going on in their household. Some people are adult learners, they're trying to go back to school, they're trying to do all these things, and you just don't have time to just sit up and watch TV all day. So I get it. And then people still have a social life. So I totally understand. Again, share my video, you know, let someone else see it. I try to give you as much detail about the episode as I possibly can. So if you haven't seen it, at least you can say, I do kind of feel like I know what's going on. So again, guys, if you want to drop me a comment or just say hello, please feel free to do that as well. I know that's not everybody's thing, but I never want to turn anyone away from commenting, or even if you don't agree with me, as long as it's respectful, I'm cool with that. Like I said, I always learn from other people. You can always get something from someone else's perspective, and sometimes you can just agree to disagree. But again, if you like Married to Medicine, the finale of their reunion, or the second part of their reunion, is tonight. I will be reviewing that, and I will have that up for you guys tomorrow, probably midday tomorrow. So hang in there with me, guys. Again, like I said, like this video, and I will see you on the next go round. Have a great day. Again, happy Sunday to you guys. Bye.